Hello everybody, my name is Slima Al-Omari. I'm glad to be here again to run this lesson about grammar that deals with basically conditionals. Today we are going to shed light on conditional type 1. This is a review, of course, you might have seen that before. Conditional review conditional type 2 and introduce conditional type 3. Alright, so get ready so as to get started. Now let's see conditional type 1. Right, conditional type 1 is mostly referred to as real possibility. The first conditional, which is type 1, is used to talk about a particular condition or situation in the future and the result of this condition. There is a real possibility that this condition will happen. Okay, so conditional type 1, we're talking about a future possibility or a future situation. Now let's see a couple of examples. If I meet Muhammad, I will tell him the story. Number 2, will you take an aspirin if you have a headache? Third example, we will not play the match if it rains. Right? Okay, you might have noticed that if is recurrent, meaning it's repeated in the 3 previous examples. Conditional sentences are also called if sentences or structures. So if is an absolutely indispensable ingredient in conditional sentences, whether they are type 1, type 2, or type 3, or maybe type 0, as you might maybe see later in further developed studies. Now, if I meet Muhammad, I'll tell him the story. In this sentence, we are speaking about future condition or possibility. I haven't met Muhammad yet, but there is a big possibility that I'll meet him. Okay? Likewise, same thing. Will you take an aspirin if you have a headache? No, you don't have a headache. You still don't have a headache, but it's a future possibility. Okay? Likewise, as in the third example, we will not play the match if it rains. That's a condition or a possibility. Okay? Now it's not raining, but it may rain at any time. Right? That's an assumption. Now let's just look at the structure or tenses or verb forms of conditional type 1. If I meet Muhammad, that's the first clause, which is called if clause. I will tell him the story, subordinate clause, second clause. What do you notice? The if clause is in present simple tense. If I meet, verb meet. Whereas the verb in the other clause is in simple future, will tell. So this is mainly the way it's done in conditional type 1. So if clause is conjugated in present simple and subordinate clause is in simple future. The others, if plus subject, simple present, subordinate clause is in simple future. Now let's do an exercise. Put the verbs between brackets in the correct form, bearing in mind the structure of conditional type 1 that we have dealt with so far. I'll pick you up at school if it rains. Now you are asked to put the verb rain, which is between brackets, in the right form. Second sentence, you call me if they come, and mind you, this is a question, all right? It's interrogative. Number 3, what will you do if you fail the exam? And fourth example, I not come if it snows. So this is, you can deal with it systematically, just without maybe even understanding the meaning of the sentence, so the structure is apparent. Correction, it's correct. Sentence 1, I'll pick you up at school if it rains. So the if clause, the verb in the if clause is conjugated in simple present, as we said before, while I will pick you up is conjugated in simple future. Sentence number 2, will you call me if they come? Will you call me if they come? Likewise. Sentence 3, what will you do if you fail the exam? And fourth sentence, I will not come if it snows, or I won't come if it snows. Right? So as a summary, conditional type 1 is in if clause, there is present simple, and in subordinate clause, it's conjugated in simple future. Consolidation, just a few examples. If I get hungry, I will eat a burger. We will not play the match if it rains. Now notice, look at the picture. It's not raining, it's cloudy. It tells that it might rain at any time. So it's just an assumption, a condition, okay? But it's possible. Right. Now let's move on to conditional type 2. Conditional type 2 is mostly referred to as unreal possibility or a dream. It's a kind of a dream. Let's see how. We are thinking about a particular condition in the future and the result of this condition. But there isn't a real possibility that this condition will happen. How? Look, if I were a scientist, I would invent the H1N1 cure. Do you think a pig can be a scientist? It's a dream. It's not a real possibility. But I can't be a scientist, or I am not a scientist. I wish they could do. One more example. Would you be surprised if a camel went through the eye of a needle? Would you be surprised if a camel went through the eye of a needle? No. You wouldn't be surprised because the camel can't go through the eye of a needle. There is no doubt that you have noticed the following. Structure of conditional type 2. If, subject. Past simple. Right? Subordinate clause, subject, would, or maybe should, might, could, or other models plus infinitive. Right. Okay? Exercise. Now put the verbs between brackets in the correct form. Number 1, he would feel better if he take an aspirin. Notice that the if clause is situated at the end of the sentence here. Number 2, what would you do if you become rich? Third sentence, if they win the game, we would applaud them. Fourth sentence, polar ice could melt if the temperature be higher. So the verbs to be conjugated here are between brackets. Take, first example, become in the second example, win in the third example, and be in the last example. Right? Now take a few seconds, look at the sentences. Just put it in mind, the structure of conditional type 2 should be if plus past, the other clause would, could, might, whatever, plus modals plus infinitive. Now let's correct these sentences. He would feel better if he take an aspirin. What's your answer? Yes, he would feel better if he took an aspirin. Notice that take is conjugated in simple past here, or past simple. There is a second possibility, the same sentence, same meaning, no difference, but we can switch the clauses so that the if clause becomes in the initial position. Okay? If he took an aspirin, comma. Remember to put a comma there? Only when the if clause is situated or located in the initial position. If he took an aspirin, he would feel better. Same thing, question number 2, or sentence number 2, which is a question. What would you do if you become rich? What would you do if you became rich? Okay, so if clause is in past simple. Of course, here it's not common to say if you became rich, what would you do? Because it's a question. We just start with WH word. What would you do if you became rich? Sentence 3. If they win the game, we would applaud them. So the right answer is if they won the game, we would applaud them. Or we can say we would applaud them if they won the game. So it's the same, okay? Although the sentence, the location or the situation of the clauses differ from one sentence to the other, but it's the same sentence, it's the same meaning. Third sentence, the last one in this example, polar ice could melt if the temperature be higher. Maybe your answer might slightly differ here in this particular sentence, but let's see first possibility. Polar ice could melt if the temperature, here I said, might differ, so there are two possibilities, was or more accurately were higher. Polar ice could melt if the temperature was or were higher. And second form, if the temperature was or were higher, well, of course only one of them is to be written here. But we just want to shed light on the possibility of both of them. Polar ice could melt. I repeat, last example, if the temperature was or were higher, polar ice could melt. Now, the focus here is on conditional type 3. What is conditional type 3 in the first place? The third conditional is used to talk about a condition in the past. Remember, we talked about conditions in the future with conditional type 1 and conditional type 2, but here we are speaking about a condition in the past that didn't happen. Okay? That's why there is no possibility for this condition. Conditional 3 is also like a dream, but this time with no possibility to come true. The best label we can label conditional type 3 is Shakespearean quote, "What is done and can't be undone." Sentence 1. If you had invited me, I would have come. How can we interpret this sentence? But you didn't invite me, so I didn't come. Sentence 2. If he hadn't passed the exam, his mom might have been very sad. If he hadn't passed the exam, his mom might have been very sad. The interpretation is, but he passed the exam, so his mom wasn't sad. He passed the exam, so his mom wasn't sad. Now, another sentence, another example, if you hadn't been busy, we could have met. If you hadn't been busy, we could have met. So we can interpret the sentence as such, but you were busy, so we didn't meet, which means that this didn't take place and there is no possibility for it to take place unless you go back to the past and change things, which is impossible. Another sentence would be, if the taxi driver hadn't been driving so fast, they wouldn't have had an accident. I repeat, if the taxi driver hadn't been driving so fast, they wouldn't have had an accident. What do you understand from this sentence? What we understand is the taxi driver was driving so fast, so they had an accident. Okay? So they did have an accident. It took place. I mean, no way to change it. Right. One more example. I would have told Ali if I had seen him. I would have told Ali if I had seen him. But I didn't see him, so I didn't tell him. Okay? Exercises, or exercise 1. Match sentence parts in column A with those in column B. I give you a set of sentence parts in column A. Let's start. 1. If you had listened to the news. 2. If she hadn't lost your number. 3. The planes wouldn't have crashed. 4. Your parents wouldn't have agreed with your choice. Column B. A. She might have called you. B. You could have learned about the matter or the subject. C. If you had told them about it. D. If the weather had been fine. Okay? Take a few seconds, look again, or read quickly again these sentences or parts of the sentences and see with which parts they match. Okay? Right. Now let's move to correction. Sentence 1. If you had listened to the news, which one you think it matches with? Correct answer is you would have learned about the matter. Sentence 2. If she hadn't lost your number, the right sentence part that matches with it is she might have called you. Sentence 3. The planes wouldn't have crashed if the weather had been fine. Fourth sentence. Of course, your parents wouldn't have agreed with your choice if you had told them about it. Let's see these sentences again written a different way. 1. If you had listened to the news, you could have learned about the matter. 2. If she hadn't lost your number, she might have called you. Third sentence. The planes wouldn't have crashed if the weather had been fine. Fourth sentence. Your parents would have agreed with your choice if you had told them about it. So the if clause is in past perfect, whereas the subordinate clause is composed as follows. So could, might, would, have, past participle. Exercise. Rewrite these sentences using conditional 3. Example. I could buy that car because I didn't have enough money. I want you to do like this. I could have bought that car if I had had enough money. Now let's move to the, or if I had had enough car, I could have bought that, enough money, sorry, I could have bought that car. Now first sentence, he hurt his knee because he wasn't careful. Second sentence, because he was poor, she couldn't marry him. Third sentence, Sam didn't come with us because nobody asked him. And fourth sentence, I didn't drive you to because you took the bus. Now let's see the first sentence. He hurt his knee because he wasn't careful. How can we write this sentence in conditional 3? We can say, for example, he wouldn't have hurt his knee if he had been careful. Another possibility, if he had been careful, he wouldn't have hurt his knee. Second example, your aunt B. Because if he hadn't been poor, she could have have married him if he hadn't been poor. Third example, so Sam didn't ask him. Right? The right answer, Sam might have come with us if somebody asked him. Or maybe if somebody had asked Sam, he might have come with us. Fourth sentence, I didn't drive you because you took the bus. The right answer, I could have driven you if you hadn't taken the bus. Or we can say, if you hadn't taken the bus, I could have driven you. So this is a table that explains difference between conditionals type 1, 2, and 3. Have a look at it. Conditional 1, it's likely to happen. We're talking about future, okay? If it rains, we couldn't play the game. Conditional 2, or second conditional, about future. If we won the game, we could be the champions. And last condition, which is impossible, okay? And we're talking about the past. If I had seen him, I would have told him, right? Okay, here we have come to the end of our lesson for today. I hope you have benefited from the lesson, and here is Sliman again greeting you. Thank you very much for following me, and bye-bye.